Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest newsletter breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Michael LoPiano, and today we are looking at what we have ahead of us going into the end of this first week of the September OPEX period. We're going to be thinking about what we might expect for today, what we might expect going into next week, and maybe a little bit farther after that, thinking about some interesting signs we see coming up that suggest maybe some bullish divergence in the future. So we're going to be thinking about that today. Before we get to that, we will start out with our Bible verse in honor of our friend Richard Newton. And today we are continuing with our reading in the book of Genesis. We are taking a look at the third section of the first chapter. So you'll recall, right, we've been looking at this account of creation as it's presented in the book of Genesis. In particular, this portrait of this figure called God, who exists in this realm beyond time and space, who exists in this realm of primordial waters, what the historian of religion and comparative scholar of religion, Mircea Eliade, might refer to as the pre-cosmogonic chaos that often finds itself in many of these creation myths. But we have a special one here, of course, in that it is so ordered in this particular way that we have this creator, we have this person, whoever he may be, whoever this God may be, in this place beyond space and time first, being an actor who brings this time into being. Of course, our term Genesis comes from the Greek genesis, meaning becoming. And so on the first day, we see this God bring into being light and time, right? So time comes into being and light, right? Whatever this is, it's not physical light, since we don't actually have any sources of physical light, but light is brought into being. The second day, which we looked at earlier this week, of course, also involves the bringing together of space and sort of the bridge between space and time. Of course, we have waters above, waters below, and a firmament, a firm standing place, but we have no ground yet, right? So there's some sort of domain that is carved out within space, time, and potential. Something about this, right? There is an actuality in the midst of possibilities, an actuality, a reality in the midst of what is only possible or probable, or what has been possible and what has been probable. So an interesting definition of these things in the first couple days. But on the third day, we get something a little bit more firm. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at our reading here from our King James Version. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself, and after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Or we might say as well, it was evening and it was morning, the third day. Something, how the phrasing goes in the Hebrew. So what we see here is this principle of increase, the principle of generation, or perhaps even of auto-generation. We get an ordering of what will fill this firmament, what will go upon this firmament, what will be in this domain of reality, of race, as we would say in Latin, of things, of something that is firm to the touch, something of that sort. And so, right, we have earth created, a stable place in relation to water, right? So at the same time that we're getting this definition of the boundaries of reality, we're also getting an important relationship of these different relational terms, these different images to one another that will form the basis by which the structure of reality and the language of creation are communicated to the reader here. Very excellent book on that by Matthew Pajot, if anyone has the opportunity to check it out, The Language of Creation. So we get the earth, we have the seas, right? The earth is put in relation to the seas, right? This is different than the other waters that in their state prior to the instantiation of the dry land. So the earth is put in relationship to the seas. We have a firm place. We have a place of, say, uncertainty, of change, of continual change. But from these two, from the juxtaposition of these two forces, the earth and the sea, we have the emergence of what grows. So first grass, then herb, which yields seed, and the fruit tree, which yields fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself. So we have these sort of 3 degrees of plant life that behave according to the principles of increase and auto-generation. So we have this idea of growth, we have this idea of yield, of increase, that something may have something of a life to it, right? A cycle to it, that it does not merely exist in stasis, and either in the state of stasis as something like the earth, although of course we don't think of the earth as necessarily being absolutely static today, and the seas, which of course are always moving, but something that through its process of being, through its process of becoming, yields unto itself more of itself. So we have the first instance of something that looks like life, and this first instance of something which the Creator has made, which yields more of itself unto itself. This is an important day and an important step in the ordering of the cosmos according to its presentation by the book of Genesis. So this is these are deep, deep principles, right? The principles that are outlined here in the very first book of Genesis, this idea of yield, this idea of increase, this idea of growth, right? These are fundamental principles. These are deep archetypal images that correlate to patterns in nature that stem from the very structure of creation itself. That if you want to understand how this is going to work, right, you want to master this in its abstracted form in, say, markets or economics or trading or whatever you might do in building a family, right, and thinking about how, as we'll see, of course, later in the Bible, right, how man will be created in a similar fashion, will resemble these various first elements, these priors to his existence, then you need to grasp these ideas. These ideas are absolutely essential for that. So perhaps this week for some meditation, we can always refer to this, right? We can come back to this at our, in time for our live stream this week, right? We will have our live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern time today after market close. So look forward to seeing you guys there. And yeah, we can talk GameStop, but another reason why I'm excited to feature some of these readings and such into our weekly episodes is this can give us some food for thought and some things for us additionally to discuss, say, outside of just our finance content on a regular basis. So very much looking forward to seeing everyone there. All right, let's take a look. Let's turn our attention over to our analytics for today. And before we get into, oops, we want this has moved. Before we get into our main discussion, we have to turn our attention to our gratitude. And our gratitude for today's newsletter goes out to Scott. Once again, thank you, Scott, for sponsoring today's newsletter and the video breakdown, as well as to our monthly supporters, Not Medical Advice, Master Kurt, Let's Go Cosmotropic, Diswag 52, and Hey Luckies, aka Faithless Looter, for helping offset some of my data and publication expenses on a regular basis. Thank you to everyone, of course, who leaves comments, questions. Everything is very great, right? Still have yet to hear back from my broker about possibly lowering options fees, but thank you so much for those tips for all y'all who pointed that out to me. We'll see what they say. I have to wait 6 to 10 business days. Putting away 7 to 10 business days. That's a great clip. You all should watch that after this video if you can find it. But let's go ahead and turn our attention to our analysis for today. Obviously, right, how did this week turn out? As we thought it might, right? We got that little play, a little bit of move into that 23-24 area before we went ahead and slipped back down, back into this kind of upper 22s, continuing to slide down towards max pain, a little bit above max pain right now. Maybe we get a little bit of play back into the 2250 plus area between there and 23. We'll take a look at what that looks like and how that's looked like, both in terms of our option structure and gamma exposure to the market maker in a moment. I would say that what seems to be the case, as in what has been affecting some of that slipping, is a little bit of weakness in some of our our immediate term sort of type of sort of fundamental valuation components. So particularly, we're always keeping an eye on the relationship of GameStop's Bitcoin treasury to the valuation of its shares. And of course, when we see these fluctuations in Bitcoin price, that is going to have a slight effect on GameStop's price. If Bitcoin loses a few $1,000s in value, that's going to take a few cents off of how GameStop is being valued. So that can put some downward pressure on the stock. At the same time, really curiously, right, we've seen the probability of a rate cut come down. I don't know exactly why this is happening. We're seeing a lot of Powell comments. This was a big to-do yesterday, of course, with poly market odds getting down close to, I think, about 2/3, maybe down about 60% chance only of a rate cut. So really interesting to see this happen. But of course, when we see this come in, that is going to tell us that major institutions can hedge their interest rate swaps a little bit differently. That they can allow, let's say, they can allow themselves to hedge accordingly. They will need to hedge accordingly to allow for the possibility that, in fact, there will not be an interest rate cut. And as we see this probability go up of rates standing steady, that is going to have a slightly bearish depreciative effect on GameStop's price. So a little bit of a surprise there. I'm not so sure that that means we won't get a rate cut at the end of September, but it's definitely worth keeping an eye on for the meantime. What I would say is very promising. Obviously, right, are the gap between our 55 PMO moving average and the 20 and 35 PMO lines on Roaring Kitty's price momentum oscillator, his particular configuration of the price momentum oscillator. We do see that gap on our daily chart continuing to narrow. That is a very bullish sign when it means we are getting close to an opportunity for some serious bullishness, for a serious move to the upside. Something like one of these bigger volatility cycles. So something like what we've seen here right over the past year. So we got one of these right before we had Roaring Kitty's return in 2024. We got another one of these right during National Cat Day. We got another one of these coming out of early April and the closing of the first convertible bond offering. So we have another one of these moments coming up. We are getting very close to a sizable move to the upside. To me at this point, right? So last week, going into the end of last week, we talked about this last Friday. What did I say? I think we're looking about another 2 or so weeks. Beginning of this week, another about 7 to 10 trading days. What it's looking like right now, I would say at least another week. I think it's probably going to take another week. Obviously, if somebody wants to pull the trigger early, it can kind of force that cross. But from the way it looks to me, and again, it continues to show me something like this through our options market, we probably have about 1 more week to go before we start to see some movement to the upside. And when we do, if we go ahead and see a cross like this, that's going to be a sign that we could expect some decent volatility and bullish price recovery to return, at least for a spell. What's also interesting is seeing over the past 3 days, right, on the 4-hour chart, the Altimeter 5's Bottom Finder 2.0 flashed yesterday. The highest signal, the highest spike we've seen since the pre-sneeze period. So this is the highest spike of his Bottom Finder 2.0 that has occurred since really since like 2018 or 2019, 2020, kind of going into the lead up to the sneeze in 2021. And really what this says, it has a lot to do with, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what he is tracking to get these values, but basically this corresponds to GameStop not moving in the way that the rest of the market does, using like a basket of some very key indicators, which Altimeter keeps to himself, but by basically tracking how much and for how long GameStop does not move with the rest of the market as would be indicated, right, as would be expected. So for example, if the rest of the market is going somewhere and GameStop is not, this indicator is going to go off. If GameStop is absolutely tanking and everything else is totally doing fine or increasing or something like that, this indicator is also going to show values. So basically what we saw emerge here yesterday was print of evaluation of the span of really 3 days, where GameStop was not moving in a way that would be expected based on the way that the rest of the entire market, not just including, not just S&P 500, probably includes things like gold, silver, and the like, probably some cryptocurrencies as well. So very interesting to see that. Ultimator's bottom finder typically has been very good at pointing out times where we're about to see some pretty major bullish reversal within a couple days. So interesting to see this pop up. Maybe this starts to project something even as early as the middle of next week. Of course, we do have our 2-week IV appreciation lead up coming in next week. So we should start to see that take an effect. I mean, assuming that things go as they have in the past, we should start to see some IV appreciation with respect to earnings show up on our IV readings next Tuesday, so the 26th. Very interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But in terms of our options data, what are we seeing? What do options tell us is most likely for the near future? Well, we don't really see that much going on in the immediate term. Again, today that this is projecting, we're probably looking at a max pain finish or something around there, finish between 2250 and 23. Certainly nothing kind of off the charts. Who knows? I mean, obviously there's a chance for things to happen, but I would say based on what we're looking at in terms of our options data, I'm not seeing anyone betting on that. And I'm not seeing that in our GEX numbers. So as we can see, right, we are seeing market maker gamma exposure collapse in the short term down on that 23 strike. $23 is a call wall position. It is our largest position of net call gamma exposure to the options market maker. As I talked about early in the week, right, as the week goes forward, that 23 position is going to emerge as a very clear spot for a very clear target and chief target as a call wall. So we could see some movement today toward that call wall, but I would still doubt that it would be breached and held prior to this week's expiry. Maybe going into September. Well, going into September, it's a different story. But into the end of August, really, even next week, we're still not seeing the values that we would like to see to say with more conviction, say, well, we've got a chance to kind of move out of this stranglehold in the 23 area. So for example, if we go ahead and look at unusual whales here, here's our composite gamma. But if we look week by week, for example, we take a look at, here's today's. Of course, you can see just how outstanding that 23 strike is. We can go up, we can test that. Very unlikely that's going to be moved beyond, barring some unusual event that would cause that to happen. And sometimes even when we have those types of unusual events, we still get control so that we don't move too far off that mark. As we see going into next week too, the 29th, right, end of August, we still basically have 23 standing out as that largest position. And as the week goes forward, we'll have to see what kind of OI is rolled going into Monday's trading, but by and large, it does seem like that's going to hold up. This structure that we've been seeing for a lot of weeks is going to hold up going into the end of the week as our most likely structure for trading, and a target for the end of the week is probably 23. Going into September, though, we do start to see a shift, right? So we no longer see 23 with that. With that character, right? So we don't see the same level of net call gamma exposure right now for the 5th of September. It does shift a bit upward. We see some net at 2350. 24 is a much larger net position than either of the two below it. But really our call wall moves back up to 25 going into September 5th. So this says that at least at this point in time, traders and institutions are not in a position to want to be exposed on the call side to gamma, or I should say, they are not taking trades that expose the market maker, the options market maker, to call gamma, net call gamma, by and large, at that 23 strike, which has been very different, right? That exposure, that role for the 23 strike has defined our trading. It's defined our trading this week, defined our trading last week. Really, for most of the August OPEX period following July OPEX, that 23 strike has defined our trading and our weekly closes. So that right now is not the case going into September 5th. 25 emerges once again, that, emerges as it has historically been, more so of a call wall, a likely call wall target versus 23, which really only has recently been the case. So very interesting that that's the case, certainly going into earnings, the week before earnings, and then of course coming after earnings. Although we don't have too much OI for the 12th yet, we do see that, yeah, the risks, right? You can see traders, institutions not taking the same amount of risk in these closer strikes as we get into the earnings period there. So definitely some good things, right? Some excitement on the horizon to finally start to see some price movement there in GameStop, some price improvement, a transition between modes. Yeah, we'll of course have to see what that's going to look like. We'll have time, of course, to discuss more of this on the live stream tonight. So look forward to seeing all you guys there at 4 p.m. Eastern time after market close. It's going to be a good time, as it always is. Look forward to seeing you guys, hearing questions, talking with you, joking with you, and yeah, getting into this, and maybe even some philosophy and such. We'll see what we have time for. So look forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks very much, as always, for watching and listening. Enjoy your Friday, and we will see you tonight. Take care, everyone. Thanks.